So I was sitting here figuring out, how do I introduce this topic? How do I make an intro for this video? I mean, we all know what Nintendo is at this point. If you're clicking on this video and don't know what Nintendo is, What? But the thing about Nintendo, when you look at their history, both in terms of hardware and in terms of games, you can see that Nintendo has worked very hard to create a very specific image for themselves about establishing connection and a person-centered approach. However, there is this split happening. People are becoming increasingly aware that their brand identity revolving around joy doesn't quite match how they treat the people who buy their products. So we're just gonna talk about how Nintendo built this image for themselves, some incidents in the past recent years that started forming cracks in that image, and then bring it back to the present. If you look at the history of Nintendo's growth, the way they move from one thing to the next, you see this story of adapting and then going from adapting to thriving, a very consistent staircase to where they are now. The company is old, really, really old. You know, in professional terms, that's how we define time periods. It's old, okay? Nintendo is older than when Red Dead Redemption 2 takes place. They started in 1889 producing playing cards. Eventually, in the 1960s, they started making electronic toys. And I find that pretty interesting because Nintendo did not have to make that pivot. They could have stuck with cards, they could have made toys without the use of electronics, but they decided to really dive into that area, which really is what starts them on the current trajectory towards the games industry. And then in the 1970s, instead of just making electronic toys, they made accessories for consoles, which are basically electronic toys for consoles. So they went from cards to toys to console accessories, and now we see them making consoles with accessories. And their highest earning IP that they own, albeit they own only part of it, is Pokemon, which has a huge component of playing cards. So cards to cards. Another great example of how Nintendo has been consistent over the decades is the way they name things. In 1977, they released the consoles, the Color TV Game 6 and the Color TV Game 15. It has color, you use it on the TV, and it's a game. The Nintendo Switch is also called a Switch because it switches. We can see with their advertising, there's been a focus on making the consoles a connection tool. This is where you make memories with those you love. Their commercials for the Switch are incredibly consistent. Here's a couple from the Nintendo UK channel. There's a holiday season treasure moments together commercial, and when life gives you a moment, grab it with Nintendo Switch. Which, I mean, kind of sounds a little bit dystopic, like, hey, don't cherish the moment, just get in video game. But I get what they're trying to say. They're trying to say, like, hey, we're here for your best moments. You're gonna make moments with Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Australia has Find New Beginnings with Nintendo Switch. The American one has A Spirit of Friendship. And Nintendo Japan also takes a similar approach. It's all connection focused, and it has been for quite some time, because even the 2006 Wii commercials, there's this Wii ad that shows a family gathered around playing Wii Sports. One of Nintendo's most popular YouTube videos is actually something as boring as a parental controls tutorial, but they animated it with care. They took one of their more evil characters, Bowser, and humanized him. You know, he's just a dad trying to enforce some rules on the house. We see that family-friendly Nintendo feel, care, and quality. Nintendo overall has been able to reach people unfamiliar with gaming, and among gamers and their fans, establish this idea of innocence and joy. However, while they may have a very public face of what they put out there themselves, their business operations are also an increasingly public matter. Their reputation as being for connection, for joy, for building memories and exploration doesn't match the attack, competition, cutthroat nature of how they conduct their business. A lot of people have just started saying that Nintendo hates their fans. I like to look back at this moment in Nintendo's history on the internet in recent years. It's probably a little bit forgotten now, but I don't think it should be. When Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity came out in 2020, streamers in Australia were issued copyright takedowns on Twitch for supposedly playing the game early. If you weren't granted special access to the game, and you're playing it before it came out, then it must have been leaked to you, so thus, you know, copyright strike, blah, 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 whatever. However, the game actually was already out. The game was already out in Japan, parts of Europe, and Australia, and when you look at this time zone map, it's especially baffling because Nintendo is a Japanese company. So they were in the time zone where it was already public, but then copyright struck Australians for supposedly having the game early. So these streamers were playing the game in the bounds of what was legally allowed, and in the bounds of what Nintendo supports, sports. I mean, if the game is out, you can play it. Yet on a site Nintendo doesn't own, but they can influence through their power, these people faced pretty harsh consequences even though they weren't doing anything wrong. So at this point, a lot of people looked at this situation and the idea that Nintendo cared about their consumers was falling apart harder than my ceiling did a few weeks ago. It was a disaster. It was like a demolition site. My desk got all scuffed up. I don't even know the timing of this, but right after my ceiling collapsed. Today's sponsor, FlexiSpot, reached out to me. They sent me their E7 Plus standing desk and their C7 Max chair. One of the things I love about this desk is that it's very stable. See, it's a 4-leg standing desk instead of just a 2-leg design. This basically gives it increased stability whenever you're raising it and lowering it. As you can see, it passes the CAT test. I know a lot of people put their desk in their house, but if you wanted to put your house on your desk, it wouldn't even break a sweat. This one can hold 540 pounds of static weight and 400 pounds lifting capacity. It can lift up to 51.5 inches. So this is the highest 4-leg standing desk you can buy. I think it's great that it's budget friendly. A lot of 4-leg standing desks go for more than $1,000. And I love that this comes with a 15-year warranty. See, I love with a standing desk, I don't have to be sitting all day. I can like move around a little bit. I can stand up. This whole video has been recorded from the standing desk. But the chair they sent me, the C7 Max, see, it has a latex seat cushion, which makes it very comfortable, but also more mold resistant, durable, and hypoallergenic than traditional foam. It has 12 hours of comfortability. When I need to, I can sit for long hours at a time and still feel great. See, my old chair kinda sucked. It was so uncomfortable after just like 3 hours of sitting because nothing on it could be adjusted. The thing that's nice about the C7 Max though is that it's like everything is adjustable. The headrest can be moved and tilted. You can also customize the seat depth to your liking. You can recline, and the 5D armrest can go in so many different directions. You can customize that entirely. And the seat's lumbar support is extremely ergonomic and a huge plus. You never realize how much constant discomfort like actually gets in the way of your ability to concentrate. But with this, I have more peace of mind, right? So I'm able to edit faster, be more present when I game. It really is helpful. So FlexiSpot is having huge sales right now and you don't want to miss out. So if you want to shop, you can use my code Savantics to get an extra $30 off and get your own E7 Plus standing desk or C7 Max chair. And if you have a limited budget, you can always choose their E7 or C5. Click the link in the description if you want to learn more. Thank you FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back into it. Over the past years, there's been YouTubers who have had their videos taken down because they used mods.
I got the scariest block of emails I have ever received in my life. Nintendo has decided to copyright claim 6 of my Animal Crossing modding videos.
Nintendo decided to block all 4 videos that I put up on YouTube playing the multiplayer mod. I appealed their decision. Nintendo then escalated and issued a copyright strike against my YouTube channel. Not once, but twice.
Not nefarious mods, just mods that do no real harm, but the fact that they were using a mod in general was something that Nintendo didn't like. You could argue that there are times where if you purchase a product, you can't just use it any way you want without consequence. Like for example, if you buy a banana, it may be fair for Big Banana to go after you if you, instead of eating the banana, you decide, hey, I'm gonna lay a bunch of banana peel traps around a nursing home, okay? If you buy a product and you use it to harm somebody or something, obviously you should expect consequence. But Animal Crossing mods clearly do not fit this description. Not every game, not every company supports mods or makes it easy to mod their game. However, very rarely do you see companies actually just going after any person they can find who's using a mod. Seems really petty and stupid. And let's not forget the time in 2013 where Nintendo went on a bit of a roll with copyright claiming YouTubers for having Let's Plays of Nintendo games. The year they did this, it was an absolute year for Nintendo. They were struggling with the Wii U flopping, and then they got sued twice. I'm going through a hard time. Let me take it out on you! And lots of people were outraged by this. But it needs to be said, there were some Nintendo fans who defended this decision back then. There are some people who will defend any move Nintendo does just because it's their right. They're defending their intellectual property. It's their right. It's a good thing Nintendo does this because of technicality. That was what we saw back then too. What if that became the norm? If all of them did adopt this stance and people just sat there and said, yeah, no more Let's Plays, think about the amount of content we would have missed out on. And I heavily believe Nintendo going after people instead of larger companies makes it feel a lot more personally hostile. Feels like it could be anybody, except no, they won't actually go after anybody. The obvious thing all these people have in common is that they were engaging with and using Nintendo products. Self-evident, this is obvious, 1 + 1 is 2, but if you interact with a Nintendo product, you are more likely to be targeted by by Nintendo. To a lot of people, Nintendo has started feeling actively hostile. They're taking a direction that people do not want to follow. But if you really want to see Nintendo bring out the axe, you have to look at the incidents where Nintendo gleefully steps into the role of the executioner. The times where it appears they want other people to know what will happen if they are crossed. See, they decide to sue Palworld for $65,700 in damages. Some of the moves that Nintendo has been making during this Palworld lawsuit have been incredibly concerning. They wanted the game shut down, so they decided to go take the patent infringement route. So after this game has launched, right after the game's launched, not before, Nintendo has decided to patent certain things, and now determine that certain things are in violation of those patents. Now, Nintendo filed a patent regarding mounts, and they filed a patent regarding summoning something to fight for you. And these things came out after Palworld was released, so really what this does, it's going to deter developers from experimenting, from putting so many things in their game, just in case it's a little too close to something Nintendo has done. People are going to be looking over their shoulder now, questioning if they're violating a patent that doesn't even exist yet. The concept of getting little tiny animal-based things to fight for you has been a core part of successful franchises that aren't Pokemon. For example, Bakugan. With Bakugan are typically based on animals or mythological creatures, just as Pokemon are, except Bakugan are a bit more mechanical. In Bakugan, you throw the Bakugan is in a ball shape, and then it unfolds into the creature. But you still do have that releasing a ball motion to engage in a fight between two creatures and two trainers. Tons of things that have been close to the Pokemon format. When it comes to defending intellectual property, right? When it comes to defending anything, there's a point where defense becomes offense. If you keep defending something so heavily, if you don't draw the line, eventually you're going to start defending your thing against people who aren't even really properly attacking or coming for it. Thus, it starts becoming increasingly unclear, did they strike the first blow? Is this really defense, or are you striking the first blow? Are you on the offense? And with Nintendo, their defense has become so strict, Nintendo is seen as this strict force on the attack. Now let's discuss the matter of the Nintendo seal of quality. This tiny little thing on the Nintendo games you get. This actually used to be on the front of the boxes, and this actually used to mean something. Back in the 1980s, the Nintendo seal of quality emerged. Nowadays in America, it's called the official Nintendo seal, and in Europe, it's called the original Nintendo seal of quality. But back in the 80s, it emerged as the Nintendo seal of quality. Now, the Nintendo seal of quality came about because during this time period, there was a huge inconsistency in the quality of games people were buying. Nintendo decided to step in. On Nintendo.com, we have some information on the seal. The seal of quality guarantees that you have purchased Nintendo quality and that you can be certain everything will work together without problems. But with the seal of quality, one has to ask, what standard of quality is being met? Does the seal of quality even mean anything anymore? We're gonna talk about the latest Pokemon game, Pokemon Legends ZA. Nintendo owns a third of the Pokemon company. Nintendo did not personally develop this game. That's Game Freak. However, I think it's important to talk about here because the latest Pokemon game is given the Nintendo seal of quality. The Nintendo seal of quality going on this game. You can't even really go in the buildings in this game, and you can't even go in stores. In older Pokemon games, you can at least go in stores. You look at the buildings, they're just sad, they're just flat, painted on. But this game is significantly more expensive than titles that are full of content. You will get some beautiful, beautiful textured boxes, and you will like it. Those who play the game say it takes less than 2 minutes to run from one end of the map to the other. It's a very small map when you look at other games released by top publishers. Just to additionally talk about how small this map is, here is a mall in Michigan, okay? The dimensions on Google Earth, it's about 700 meters long, 266 meters wide. I decided to import the mall into Unreal Engine with a 1-to-1 ratio. 1 square here is 1 meter, so the mall, it would be the same size as it would be in real life. I have a player in there, which is the average height of a person going through this mall, and the movement speed is pretty typical for a video game. It takes 3 minutes and 34 seconds to do a lap around this mall. I just found it really funny that as I was doing this completely unrelated project, it took me more time to do a lap of the mall than it's taking people to run across a Pokemon game. It's supposed to not be super small scale. It's supposed to feel like a city. A little bit of a random throwback, but I just need to also mention this. Years ago, the ad for Pokemon Shield being a game that also had the seal of quality, the ad, where you're supposed to be showing the best of the product, had a frame rate of 0.2, the Nintendo seal of quality. Now let's behold the most intellectual video segment I have ever done. The brilliant title in my Word document, Miscellaneous Switch 2 Era Garbage Turbo. So let's just flip through this very real, very scary thriller novel called 2025 Nintendo. Now, to make the long story short, with the price of games for the Switch 2, they are expensive. And if you're looking at the industry pricing and you're thinking, I don't really know if that game's worth that much, apparently you're just dumb and poor, okay? You are dumb and you are poor, so shut up.
Damn it! He got me!
So the Nintendo Switch 2 has a tutorial software. I don't know if it technically counts as a game. If it does technically count as a game, I refuse to call it that. Their tutorial software costs $10. One of the most brilliant things about the Wii was the fact that Wii Sports was bundled in the vast majority of Wiis that were sold. A free game that had a lot of value. It was simple, but it was really fun. You know, you got a lot of value out of it. But the Switch 2, you have to pay $10 for a tutorial. $10 for a tutorial. My name on here is Savantics, but I am not going to play semantics with the whole, it's not a tutorial, it's technically whatever the I don't care. It shows you the features of the console, and there's not really an interesting gameplay loop. It's just, here's what the console is, here's a quiz, enjoy. Like, that is absolutely diabolical. They are charging $100 for empty plastic. This plastic thing that you stick your Switch in. But Nintendo is Nintendo, and according to this very real thing written here, Nintendo can price products however they want to price them. Suck it up, you little baby. That's crazy. I can't believe we just caught that on camera. That's nuts. You do not have to buy it. Nobody is forcing you to buy it. But it does concern me that there are people who will. Each incident on their own probably doesn't stand out as a catastrophic PR event for Nintendo. But if you have enough cracks, enough flaws, eventually something just collapses. There are many ways something can collapse, but we do see a pretty common pattern is that there are a bunch of tiny fractures and then eventually it gives under its own weight. And you can see this even on social things, like in a relationship, a bunch of problems build up, but then one day there's just the break. Some people think that the cracks don't matter, that a bunch of problems piling up, that they don't matter. Oh, the company's persisted, it will continue to persist. But it is something to keep in mind, to just know each little incident being there is probably not good long term, unless they can patch those problems. I remember loving Nintendo, being so excited to get a Switch, wanting that thing for months. I remember saving up to get one, and I remember during lunch in high school, I would take it out any chance I got. I remember being excited to see what the company would do next, but to see them be this terrible is just so disheartening. When people talk about the games industry, when people criticize the greed in it, it's never actually just about that specific problem. Really, it's about what's underneath it. We're done with how increasingly hostile the relationship between companies and consumers is becoming. There are so many individuals involved in these processes. Some are creative visionaries, right? Some are people who want to pour their soul into these projects. And then you have some who just care about the shareholders and they don't even care about games at all. What is the glue that holds the company together? What makes the company? The binding force, the thing that unifies it is the dollar. When it all comes together, compromise after compromise after compromise, settling after settling after settling occurs until a lot of soul has been removed from the product just because all of these different little things were done to push profits a little bit further. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.